He said our son was a burden. I proved him wrong. You know, some folks are just born unlucky, and I guess that was me and my boy. Life's never been too kind to us. It's like every time I thought I caught a break, something came along and snatched it right out of my hands. My husband, David, he used to say I was cursed, said I brought him nothing but bad luck, and when I gave birth to our son, he proved just how cruel a man can be. I still remember that night like it's stitched into my bones. Rain was pouring hard, thunder rolling across the sky, and my heart was pounding with hope. I thought, maybe now he'll love me again. Maybe the baby would change everything. But the second David saw our boy, saw those tiny legs that wouldn't move, he froze. His face went pale, like all the life drained right out of him. And then he said it, words that still echo in my chest every single night. That's not a son. That's a burden. He dropped his coat, grabbed his bag, and walked straight out that hospital door. Didn't even look back. I held that baby so close I could feel his heart beat against mine. He was so small, so fragile, but when he opened his eyes, I swear to you, there was a spark there, a quiet kind of strength. I whispered, "You're not broken, sweetheart. You're my whole world now." We left that hospital with nothing but a threadbare blanket, a half-full bottle, and a mother's promise. No family waiting, no home worth going back to, just a leaky apartment at the edge of town, and a crib made out of old boxes and prayers. Days turned into weeks, and reality hit harder than the cold wind sneaking through the cracks in the walls. People talked. They always do. Some whispered, "Poor woman, she'll never make it." Others laughed. What kind of mother keeps a crippled child? But I learned to smile through it. Because every night when the world got quiet, I'd hold my boy, Aiden, and hum him to sleep. And every time his little fingers wrapped around mine, I knew giving up wasn't an option. You know, hunger makes a person creative. I'd stitch old clothes for neighbors, wash dishes at a diner, clean floors till my knees went raw. But I made sure Aiden always had one thing: books. I'd find them at yard sales or library bins, torn, faded, but full of dreams. He loves stories, especially the ones where the hero wasn't the strongest, but the smartest. He'd look at me and say, "Mama, I'm going to be like them someday." And I'd smile, wipe the sweat off my neck, and whisper, "You already are, baby. You already are." Still, life doesn't hand out kindness easily. When Aiden turned 13, the school called me in. The principal said, "We can't accommodate his condition properly." That's fancy talk for, "We don't want him here." I remember holding his wheelchair handle so tight my knuckles went white. He looked up at me with those big brown eyes and said, "It's okay, Mama. I'll learn from home. You can teach me." And I did. Lord, I did my best. Math on napkins, spelling on cereal boxes, lessons under a flickering light bulb. But somehow, he never complained. Not once. You know, sometimes I'd catch him staring at the other kids playing outside, and for a moment his smile would fade. Then he'd look back at his books and whisper, "I'll walk. Someday." That's the kind of faith that breaks your heart and rebuilds it in the same breath. Welcome to my channel, Grandma Stories. I'm Megan, and if you're still here listening, thank you. Tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Because what I'm about to share next, it ain't just a story, it's a journey. A journey from broken to brave, from abandoned to unstoppable. And believe me, honey, it's just getting started. You know, folks like to say time heals everything, but they don't tell you how much it hurts while you're waiting. Aiden grew up faster than I could blink. Every year, his world got a little tougher, and mine got a little smaller. bills stacked up like walls I couldn't climb, and sometimes dinner was just 2 slices of bread and a promise that tomorrow'll be better. But no matter how bad it got, I'd look at that boy, sitting by the window, books spread out, sunlight touching his face, and I'd think, this right here, this is what never give up looks like. He was different, sure, but he was mine. People didn't see a boy full of dreams. They saw a wheelchair. They didn't see future doctor. They saw broken. One day at the grocery store, a woman looked right at me and said, "You poor thing. Must be hard raising a child like that." I smiled, not out of kindness, but control. And I said, "Ma'am, it's harder raising one without a heart." She never spoke to me again. That's the kind of thing a mother learns in silence, how to stand tall when the world looks down on you. Every night I'd pray, "Lord, if you won't give my boy legs, give him wings." And maybe he did, because Aiden's mind was something else. He'd fix broken radios, take apart old computers folks threw out, said he wanted to see how things worked inside. It reminded me of his father, the same curiosity, but none of the cruelty. By the time he turned 13, he was helping neighbors with small repairs. I'd hear folks whisper, "That kid's got talent." And for once, it didn't sound like pity. He saved every dollar he made and said, "Mama, one day I'll take care of you. You'll never have to scrub another floor." But I didn't mind the scrubbing. You see, this was my real life story, the kind built on sweat, sacrifice, and a whole lot of mother's love. Still, there were nights when I'd sit on the porch watching him study through the window light, and I'd wonder if I'd done enough. If love was really enough to fight poverty, pity, and pain all at once. But God works in quiet ways. One evening, a teacher from town stopped by. She said Aiden had written an essay, "The Strongest Person I Know." It was about me, and that essay won a regional competition. I still remember her handing me the envelope, my name written in a child's shaky handwriting. Inside was a scholarship application for a science program. She said, "Your son's got something special. Don't let his disability stop him." And I laughed, tears spilling down my cheeks. Stop him? Honey, he's unstoppable. That moment changed everything. It was our first miracle moment. Proof that faith and hope weren't just pretty words. Aiden went on to join that program. Every week I'd push his chair to the bus stop before dawn, rain or shine. Some mornings my hands were so cold I couldn't feel the metal grips, but I kept pushing. Because I wasn't just sending my son to school, I was sending him toward the life he deserved. He made friends, real friends, the kind that saw beyond his chair. And one day he came home with a small card in his pocket. It said, "Future Radiologist."
I stopped waiting for people who left. I stopped mourning the life I didn't have, and I started building one I could be proud of. That's when I realized maybe me and Aiden weren't cursed. Maybe we were just unfinished. So, if you're listening to me right now, if life's kicked you down, if someone you trusted turned their back, don't you dare believe that's where your story ends. Because sometimes, soft smile, the people who leave are just making room for the miracles that follow. Welcome to my channel, Grandma's Stories with Megan. I'm so glad you're here. Now, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and let's walk through this story together. They say time heals all wounds, but nobody talks about the years in between. The years when you wake up tired, go to bed exhausted, and still find a way to smile in front of your child. Aiden was 4 when I realized he was smarter than his years. Couldn't walk, but Lord, that boy's mind could run faster than any child I'd ever seen. He'd sit by the window, looking at the kids playing outside, and ask, "Mama, do you think I'll run like them one day?" I'd swallow hard. keep my voice steady, and say, "Baby, you already run, just in ways they can't see." He believed me every time, and maybe that belief was what kept us both going. I worked 3 jobs back then: diner mornings, laundromat nights, cleaning offices on weekends. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in a window and barely recognize the woman staring back. Dark circles, cracked hands, eyes that forgot what rest looked like. But Aiden, he never complained. When I'd stumble in late, he'd have the table set, a peanut butter sandwich, a glass of water, and a little note scribbled in crayon, "For the best mama in the world." Those words, they were my paycheck, my therapy, my will to keep breathing. One day at school, a teacher called me in. Her name was Miss Parker, gentle voice, kind eyes. She said, "Megan, Aiden's bright, but the other kids, they tease him." My chest tightened. "Tease him how?" I asked. She hesitated. "They call him robot legs, broken boy, and he just laughs it off, but it hurts him." I remember sitting there, hands clutched, knuckles white, fighting the urge to storm into that classroom and protect my baby from the whole damn world. But instead, I thanked her, walked outside, sat in the car, and cried till my throat burned. That night, I tucked him into bed, brushed his hair, and said, "Baby, don't you ever let them tell you what you can't be. You hear me?" He smiled, tiny, tired, but fearless. "He won't, Mama, 'cause you don't let them tell you either." And right there, I realized I wasn't raising a boy. I was raising a warrior. Years rolled by. Medical bills piled up like bad memories, but somehow we always found a way to pay 'em. Sometimes I'd skip meals so he could have his therapy. Sometimes I'd lie awake, wondering how long I could keep fighting before I broke. But then he'd roll into my room, whisper, "Mama, I'm gonna walk one day, I promise." And I'd whisper back, "Then I'll be there when you do." At 12, he started physical therapy twice a week. Hardest thing I ever watched. Every step looked like pain wrapped in courage. But he never quit, not once. The therapist would say, "He's tough," and I'd just nod, 'cause she didn't know half of it. One day, he came home bruised. Some kids had pushed his wheelchair down the hill after school just for fun. I wanted to scream. Instead, I patched him up, wiped the dirt from his knees, and he said, "Guess they helped me go faster, huh?" That boy always found light in the dark. That night, after he fell asleep, I went outside, sat on the porch, and let the tears finally come. Cold air, empty sky, and me whispering, "Why him, God? Why not me?" And I swear, somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered back, "Because he's meant to shine where you couldn't." By 16, Aiden was winning science fairs, building small robotics, and tutoring other kids online. He'd fixed his own chair 3 times, called it Freedom 3.0. That's when a local reporter came to the house, wanted to write a story. "Boy who never walked helps others move." The article went viral, small town fame. People started seeing him more than that crippled kid. They saw his mind, his kindness, his spark. But not everyone liked that. Some people whispered ugly things. Pity story, attention, charity case. The world can't stand miracles unless they understand them. I told Aiden, "Let 'em talk, baby. You keep building." And he did.
The following spring, I visited him. Campus buzzing with life, bright banners, warm sun, laughter echoing across the quad. I watched him from a distance, talking with friends, wheelchair glinting under the sunlight. And for a second, it hit me. He didn't look like the boy who couldn't walk anymore. He looked like a man who was building a way for others to fly. I walked up. He turned. "Mama, you came." And then right there, he handed me a folded paper, a certificate, Dean's List, honors in radiologic sciences. I just held it, speechless, because it wasn't just a paper. It was proof that pain can bloom into power. A year later, his research project started getting attention. He designed a low-cost diagnostic scanner that could detect early spinal nerve damage using recycled parts and basic software. Simple, but revolutionary. He called it Project Stand. Reporters came, articles were written, and for the first time, when they said his name, they didn't say disabled. They said doctor to be. One night, around midnight, he called again. Voice quiet, not tired, but thoughtful. "Mama, do you ever wonder what would have happened if Dad had stayed?" I paused. The room went still. Only the hum of the fridge and the clock ticking on the wall. I said softly, "Maybe he wasn't meant to. Some people leave so God can show you who you really are." He was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "Then I'm glad he did, because if he hadn't, maybe I wouldn't have learned how to fight." And right there, I realized my son had forgiven a man who never asked to be forgiven. That's when I knew he'd grown beyond pain. You know, I used to think strength meant holding on, but I've learned sometimes strength is letting go. Letting go of what hurt you, of who left you, of who you thought you'd be. And somehow in that space, God plants the seeds for who you're meant to become. A few months later, I got invited to the university's recognition ceremony. Aiden was speaking as valedictorian. I wore my old blue dress, the one I'd saved for someday. Turns out, someday had finally come. He rode up to the podium, looked out at the crowd, and started speaking in that calm, confident voice I barely recognized. My mama taught me that faith isn't about getting what you want. It's about trusting what you get. She showed me that broken things can still shine, and that no matter what, you keep standing, even if it's only in your heart. Sat there, tears falling, hands clasped, and whispered, "That's my boy." That night, after the ceremony, we walked. Well, he rode, I walked, through the campus garden. The rain had just stopped. Drops sparkled on the leaves like glass. He stopped near a bench, looked at the sky, and said, "Mama, I think I finally understand why it rained so much when I was born." "Why's that?" I asked. "Because God was just making sure we'd grow." And I swear, in that moment, I felt something inside me shift, like the ache of all those years had finally turned into peace. So yeah, maybe we started unlucky, a mama abandoned, a boy broken, but look at us now. He found his wings, and somehow I found mine too. They say not all heroes wear capes. Mine wears a lab coat and carries my last name. The following spring, I visited him. Campus buzzing with life, bright banners, warm sun, laughter echoing across the quad. I watched him from a distance, talking with friends, wheelchair glinting under the sunlight. And for a second, it hit me. He didn't look like the boy who couldn't walk anymore. He looked like a man who was building a way for others to fly. I walked up. He turned. "Mama, you came." And then right there, he handed me a folded paper, a certificate, Dean's List, honors in radiologic sciences. I just held it, speechless, because it wasn't just a paper. It was proof that pain can bloom into power. A year later, his research project started getting attention. He designed a low-cost diagnostic scanner that could detect early spinal nerve damage using recycled parts and basic software. Simple, but revolutionary. He called it Project Stand. Reporters came, articles were written, and for the first time, when they said his name, they didn't say disabled. They said doctor to be. One night, around midnight, he called again, voice quiet, not tired, but thoughtful. "Mama, do you ever wonder what would have happened if Dad had stayed?" I paused. The room went still. Only the hum of the fridge and the clock ticking on the wall. I said softly, "Maybe he wasn't meant to. Some people leave so God can show you who you really are." He was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "Then I'm glad he did, because if he hadn't, maybe I wouldn't have learned how to fight." And right there, I realized my son had forgiven a man who never asked to be forgiven. That's when I knew he'd grown beyond pain. You know, I used to think strength meant holding on, but I've learned sometimes strength is letting go. Letting go of what hurt you, of who left you, of who you thought you'd be. And somehow in that space, God plants the seeds for who you're meant to become. A few months later, I got invited to the university's recognition ceremony. Aiden was speaking as valedictorian. I wore my old blue dress, the one I'd saved for someday. Turns out, someday had finally come. He rode up to the podium, looked out at the crowd, and started speaking in that calm, confident voice I barely recognized. My mama taught me that faith isn't about getting what you want. It's about trusting what you get. She showed me that broken things can still shine, and that no matter what, you keep standing, even if it's only in your heart. Sat there, tears falling, hands clasped, and whispered, "That's my boy." That night, after the ceremony, we walked. Well, he rode, I walked, through the campus garden. The rain had just stopped. Drops sparkled on the leaves like glass. He stopped near a bench, looked at the sky, and said, "Mama, I think I finally understand why it rained so much when I was born." "Why is that?" I asked. "Because God was just making sure we'd grow." And I swear, in that moment, I felt something inside me shift, like the ache of all those years had finally turned into peace. So yeah, maybe we started unlucky, a mama abandoned, a boy broken, but look at us now. He found his wings, and somehow I found mine too. They say not all heroes wear capes. Mine wears a lab coat and carries my last name.
You know, if you're listening right now and you feel like life's been unfair, like the rain just won't stop pouring, remember this.
Sometimes the storm you're in is the very thing watering your miracle. It's funny how life circles back. Just when you found peace, the past knocks on your door, like it never really left. It had been more than 20 years since I'd last seen him, Aiden's father, the man who'd walked out when our world was falling apart. By then, Aiden was 28, working at a hospital, published, respected, a name whispered in medical journals. And me? I'd finally learned to breathe without wondering if I was enough. But that night, the knock came anyway. 3 slow knocks. When I opened the door, there he was. Gray at the temples, eyes that once promised forever, now carrying guilt heavy enough to drown in. "Hi, Megan." I froze. For a moment, it felt like I was 20 again, standing in that kitchen the day he left, watching his shadow disappear down the driveway. A soft breath, steadying voice. "What do you want?" I asked. He looked down, shuffled his hands. I heard about Aiden, about what he's become. I wanted to see him." My pulse tightened. All those years of pain, poverty, loneliness, and now he wanted to see him? "You wanted to see him?" I repeated, voice low, calm but sharp. "You had your chance 20 years ago." He flinched, like the words cut him. Maybe they did. "I know," he said. "I was a coward. I couldn't handle the guilt or the shame. But I've changed, Megan. Please, I just want to talk to him once." You ever feel anger and pity crash inside you at the same time? That's what it felt like. Fire and mercy, wrestling for control. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I walked to the kitchen, pulled open that old drawer, and there it was, the photo. The same one I'd held when Aiden got his scholarship. I looked at it, at that tiny boy with the sunshine smile, and I knew what I had to do. Next day, I called Aiden. "Baby, there's someone asking to see you." "Who?" I hesitated. "Your father." Then quietly, "Tell him to meet me at the hospital." I waited outside the glass doors, watching as they faced each other for the first time. 2 men, same eyes, same jawline, but from 2 different worlds. "So, you're a doctor now." "A radiologist," Aiden corrected. Professional, distant. "I read about you online. You're doing amazing work. I'm proud of you." Aiden crossed his arms. "Proud? You don't get to be proud. You weren't there." "I know. I ran when you needed me most. You left when she needed you most," Aiden said quietly. "And yet, she still prayed for you." And that's when the man broke. He fell to his knees right there in that cold hospital hallway, hands trembling, voice cracked with years of regret. "I don't deserve forgiveness." And Aiden said, "You don't, but that's what makes it real." Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a small folded note, the same one he'd written for me when he was a child, for the best mama in the world. He handed it to his father. "She kept this, every word, every year, so you'd better thank the woman who raised me to forgive the man who didn't." Later that night, the 3 of us sat together. No big speeches, no movie endings, just silence, coffee, and memories that didn't hurt quite so much anymore. He told us he'd been sick, heart condition, working through it all on his own. Said he'd spent years trying to forget, but
Regret had a longer memory than love sometimes. I listened, not as a scorned wife, but as a woman who'd finally made peace with her own story. You know, I used to think forgiveness meant saying, it's okay, but it doesn't. Forgiveness means saying, you hurt me, but I refuse to carry it anymore. A few weeks later, Aiden invited him to one of his patient outreach programs. Kids with disabilities, laughing, drawing, playing with small robotic limbs Aiden helped design. The man stood there, tears spilling down his cheeks, watching a room full of kids who'd once been written off, now moving, living, dreaming. He whispered to me, "He's changed the world, Megan." I smiled. "No," I said softly. "The world just finally caught up with him." That night, I went home, opened the same drawer again, placed the photo next to the wedding ring I'd kept all these years. The photo, the past, the ring, the promise that broke, and in between, peace. I closed the drawer slow, whispering, "It's done." Sometimes life doesn't give you closure. You have to build it yourself. One truth, one prayer, one heartbeat at a time. So yeah, he left me once, but I didn't stay broken because every scar was just a map guiding me back to who I was meant to be. And now when I see my son laughing, teaching, helping others walk again, I realize maybe that's what grace looks like. You know, life has a way of testing the strongest hearts, but sometimes the same pain that breaks you also builds you. Today, when I watch my son stand tall in his white coat, helping others walk again, I realize our story was never about loss. It was about faith that never gave up. Maybe your story feels a little like mine. Maybe you've carried your own storm quietly. If you have, share it below. Tell me your truth, because somewhere out there, another heart might need your light tonight.